I pulled my old Ford pickup into the driveway of my son's house in Oak Park, just west of Chicago, the engine rumbling a little longer than it used to before I cut it off. It was the middle of July, the kind of humid afternoon where the air feels thick enough to chew, and the cicadas were screaming in the maples like they knew something I didn't. I sat there for a moment, hands still on the wheel, staring at the neat brick two-story ahead of me. Flags on the porch, fresh mulch in the beds, everything trimmed and orderly the way my son David likes it. I'm Harlan Whitaker, 65 years old, widower for 10 years now, and the owner of more dirt under my fingernails than most folks see in a lifetime. My wife Ellen used to say I had green thumbs and a stubborn heart. Turns out both came in handy after she passed. Back then, I was still punching a clock at the manufacturing plant in Cicero, managing inventory for conveyor belts nobody ever thinks about until they break. Decent paycheck, good benefits, a life that looked solid from the outside. But when Ellen's cancer took her quick and cruel, something in me cracked open. The house felt too quiet, the job felt pointless, and I started spending evenings in the backyard, digging up the patchy lawn and planting things that might outlive me. That was the beginning. What started as grief therapy turned into something bigger, redesigning vacant lots in the city, turning forgotten corners into community gardens, places where people could grow food, sit in shade, feel like the world hadn't completely given up on them. Sustainable design, they call it now. I just call it making something beautiful out of what everybody else threw away. Today was the annual Whitaker family barbecue, David's idea of keeping the clan together. My daughter Claire was driving in from Milwaukee with her husband and the 2 grandkids. My younger brother Ray and his wife Marlene were already here. I could see Ray's shiny Cadillac parked out front. And my sister Joan, retired nurse, sharp as ever, would be holding court on the back patio with her famous potato salad. They were all good people, successful in the ways the world measures. David ran a logistics firm. Claire was a partner in a downtown accounting practice. Ray had sold his hardware chain for a tidy sum years ago. They had 401ks and vacation condos and college funds locked and loaded. Me? I lived in the same modest bungalow Ellen and I bought in 1982, drove the same 1998 pickup with rust blooming along the wheel wells, and spent my days knee-deep in soil and sketches. To them, it was a harmless retirement hobby. "Dad's playing in the dirt again," David would say, with that fond, slightly patronizing chuckle. They didn't know about the contracts, the grants, the invitations that came from places as far away as Copenhagen and Singapore. I'd stopped trying to tell them years ago. It was easier to let them think I was just puttering around than to watch their eyes glaze over, or worse, see the worry creep in that I'd lost my grip on reality. I grabbed the foil-covered tray of sweet corn I'd picked from my own raised beds that morning and climbed out of the truck. The screen door banged open before I reached the porch. Grandpa, my granddaughter Lily, 8 years old and all knees and freckles, came barreling down the steps. Her little brother Max toddled behind her, arms out for balance. I crouched down, tray and all, and let them crash into me. Lily smelled like sunscreen and watermelon. Max just smelled like summer. "You brought corn?" Lily asked, peering under the foil. "Best ears in Cook County," I told her. "Grew it myself." She rolled her eyes in that dramatic way only kids can. "You always say that." "Because it's always true." Claire appeared in the doorway behind them, looking polished even in shorts and a linen blouse. "Dad, let me take that." She lifted the tray from my hands and kissed my cheek. "You didn't have to bring anything, you know." "I like contributing," I said. Simple truth. Inside, the house smelled of charcoal lighter and Marlene's baked beans. Voices drifted from the kitchen, Ray's booming laugh, Joan's quick comeback, David calling out instructions about grill temperatures. I followed Claire through the living room, past the built-in bookshelves full of management volumes and framed family photos. There I was in most of them, younger, standing next to Ellen at graduations, weddings, Christmases. The man in those pictures still wore collared shirts and looked like he belonged in an office. Hard to believe that was me once. David met me in the kitchen with a cold beer already in hand. "Here you go, Pop." He was 42, tall like his mother had been, with the same serious eyes. "Steaks are almost ready. You want medium rare still?" "Always." I took the beer, grateful for something to hold. Ray clapped me on the shoulder hard enough to slosh a little foam over the rim. There he is, the family green thumb. How's the backyard jungle coming along? It's coming, I said mildly. Joan looked up from slicing tomatoes. Harlan, you still messing with those community lots down in the city? I saw something on the news about urban gardening. Looked like a lot of work for not much return. I smiled the way you do when you've heard it before. It keeps me busy. Busy is good, Marlene chimed in, stirring her beans. Better than sitting around watching the grass grow, right? Everyone laughed politely. I laughed with them. It was easier. We migrated to the back patio, a spacious affair David had built himself. Redwood deck, built-in grill station, string lights waiting for dusk. The kids chased each other across the lawn, while the adults settled into Adirondack chairs with plates balanced on knees. The conversation started light. Claire's promotion, David's upcoming vacation, to Door County, Ray's new golf handicap, safe topics, family weather reports. Then, like it always did eventually, the talk turned to retirement. So Harlan, Ray said, wiping barbecue sauce from his chin, you ever think about selling the house? Downsizing? You could get a nice condo on the lakefront with what that place is worth now. I chewed my steak slowly. I like my house. It's a lot to maintain, Claire added gently. The yard alone. The yard's the best part, I said. David chuckled. Dad, nobody needs a half-acre in the city anymore. You could travel, take a cruise, live a little. Joan nodded. You worked hard your whole life. Time to relax, not play farmer. I looked out over the manicured lawn, the precise hedges, the sprinkler system ticking away on a timer. Everything controlled, predictable, beautiful in its way, but nothing wild about it. My work relaxes me, I said quietly. Ray waved a hand. Sure. Tending tomatoes is therapeutic. But come on, brother, there's a difference between a hobby and a job. You don't have to prove anything anymore. I felt the familiar weight settle in my chest. Not anger exactly, more like a deep tiredness. They weren't wrong about the old me, the man who wore ties and worried about quarterly reports. But they didn't see the man I'd become, because they'd never really looked. Claire reached over and patted my knee. We just want you comfortable, Dad. Secure. I nodded, took another bite of corn. Sweet, earthy, real. Grown from seed and soil, I'd amended myself. There was security in that too, though they'd never understand it. The sun dipped lower, turning the sky the color of ripe peaches. Fireflies began to blink in the hedge line. The kids begged for s'mores, and David fired up the little stone pit. Laughter rose again, easy and warm. For a while, I could almost pretend the undercurrent wasn't there. The quiet judgment wrapped in concern, the assumption that because I didn't chase money or status anymore, I'd somehow lost my way. I sipped my beer and watched the flames dance. Somewhere across the city, a rooftop garden I'd designed last year was feeding 40 families. A vacant lot in Englewood now had fruit trees that would shade kids for generations. A corporate campus in the Loop had a living wall that cleaned the air for thousands of workers every day. None of them knew my name, and that was fine. The work spoke for itself. But here, among the people who'd known me longest, I was still just Harlan playing in the dirt. Little did they know how deep those roots had grown. The fire pit crackled low, throwing sparks into the darkening sky, and the kids had finally worn themselves out on s'mores and were sprawled on a blanket watching tablets with headphones on. The adults lingered around the flames, beers mostly empty now, the conversation loosening the way it does when the sun goes down, and inhibitions softened just a notch. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the familiar ache in my lower back from a morning spent hauling compost bags, and let the warmth of the fires settle on my face. David poked at the logs with a long stick, sending up a shower of embers. You know, Pop, we were talking the other day about how you could monetize that gardening thing if you wanted to. I felt my stomach tighten, just a little. Here it came. Claire nodded, swirling the ice in her glass. There's a huge market for landscaping consultants now. All those big firms downtown charging 5 figures just to tell people where to put a tree. You've got the experience. You could probably pick up some side work, build a little nest egg. Ray snorted. Side work? Harlan could start his own outfit. Call it Whitaker and Sons or something. Though maybe Whitaker and Grandkids, since the sons are too busy running real companies. Everyone chuckled, including me, because that's what you do. But the laugh felt thin in my throat. I'm not looking to start a business, I said quietly. I already have enough on my plate. Joan leaned forward, elbows on her knees. That's just it, Harlan. You're 65. You shouldn't have a full plate of manual labor. Bending over all day, hauling dirt around in that old truck. It's not good for your back, your knees. What happens when you can't do it anymore? I'll cross that bridge when the ground gives way under me, I replied. Marlene gave me that sympathetic smile women her age have perfected. We worry, that's all. After Ellen, well, you threw yourself into this gardening thing pretty hard. We just want to make sure it's healthy, that you're not avoiding life by hiding in the soil. Hiding. That word landed like a stone in still water. I stared into the fire for a long moment. Ellen's the reason I started, I said finally. She always wanted a bigger garden. Remember how she used to talk about having enough space for apple trees and a cutting garden? We never got around to it while she was here, so after, I figured I'd do it for her. The patio went quiet except for the pop of burning wood. Claire's eyes softened. David looked down at his shoes. Ray cleared his throat. We get that, brother. Grief does funny things. But it's been 10 years. Maybe it's time to let some of that go. Sell the house, move somewhere easier. You've earned rest. Rest, I repeated, tasting the word. Funny. I rested for 40 years in an office chair staring at spreadsheets. Felt like dying slow. David frowned. Come on, Pop. That job put food on the table, paid for college, bought this house you're so attached to. I'm not ungrateful, I said. I know what that life gave us, but it took something too. Took mornings I could have spent watching things grow. Took evenings I could have spent with my hands in the earth instead of on a keyboard. Took years off. Ellen's life with the stress I carried home every night. Claire shifted uncomfortably. Dad, nobody's saying the old job was perfect, but at least it was stable, predictable. She gestured vaguely toward me, toward the life they imagined I led. This feels like you're gambling with your security. What if you get hurt on one of those city lots? What if the truck finally dies and you can't afford a new one? Who's going to take care of you? I take care of myself, I said, a little sharper than I meant to. Joan jumped in, always the mediator. We're not attacking you, Harlan. We're concerned. You live alone in that big house. You drive all over creation to these vacant lots. We read about crime in those neighborhoods. And for what? A few tomatoes and some flowers. I felt the heat rise in my chest, not from the fire. Those few tomatoes fed 30 families last summer from one lot alone. Those flowers brought people together who hadn't spoken in years. Kids learned where food comes from. Old folks got fresh air and purpose. It's not just pretty, Joan. It's necessary. Ray waved a dismissive hand. Sure, it's charity work. Noble, but charity doesn't pay the bills. You're dipping into savings for tools and seeds and gas, aren't you? I didn't answer. Truth was, I hadn't touched my savings in years. The grants covered materials. The contracts covered everything else. But admitting that would only invite more questions I wasn't ready to answer. David sighed. Look, maybe we're coming at this wrong. What if you scaled it back? Did smaller jobs closer to home? Charged people for backyard consultations? You could make decent money without killing yourself. Claire brightened. Exactly. I have clients who'd pay top dollar for someone with your eye. Sustainable design is hot right now. You could brand it Legacy Gardens or something. Use your story with Mom. Use Ellen's death as a marketing hook. The thought made my jaw clench. My work isn't for sale that way, I said. Ray laughed, not unkindly. Everything's for sale, Harlan. That's the real world. You taught me that when we were kids and Dad lost his job. Remember? Nothing's free, boys. You work or you want. I remembered. Our father had been a machinist, proud and stubborn, until the plant closed in '78. We'd eaten a lot of oatmeal that winter, but this was different. Some things aren't about money, I said. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Even the crickets seemed to pause. Claire tried again, softer. Dad, we love you. We just hate seeing you choose hard over easy when you don't have to. You could be comfortable, travel with Joan on one of her cruises, play golf with Ray, be a grandfather who's around, not one who's always off digging holes somewhere. I looked over at Lily and Max, asleep now under the blanket, sticky marshmallow on their fingers. The thought of more time with them tugged at me, sharp and sweet. But then I thought of the rooftop in Logan Square, waiting for spring planting. The schoolyard in Austin, where kids would learn to grow food this year. The grant proposal on my desk for a healing garden at the VA hospital. Work that mattered in ways no cruise or golf game ever could. I am around, I said finally. I'm right here, but the rest of the time, I'm doing what keeps me alive. David shook his head, not angry, just baffled. Alive doing grunt work, I don't get it. You don't have to, I replied. Ray stood up, stretching. Well, I'm getting another beer. Anybody? The spell broke. Conversation shifted to safer ground. Lily's soccer team, Max's new words, the neighbor's obnoxious new McMansion going up down the street. I sat back and let it wash over me, the familiar tide of family noise. But underneath it, the doubt had taken root deeper than ever. Not in me, in them. They looked at my life and saw failure dressed up as principle, poverty masquerading as purpose, a man clinging to grief instead of moving forward. They couldn't imagine that I'd already moved further than any of them knew. Across the city, in places they'd never drive through, my designs were changing skylines and lives, healing spaces where hurt had lived for decades, green lungs in a concrete desert. And tomorrow morning, while they slept in, I'd be up at dawn meeting with a team from the Botanic Garden about a major new commission. But tonight, I was just the old man with dirt under his nails who wouldn't listen to reason. I drained the last of my beer and watched the fire die down to glowing coals. Roots run deep, I thought, sometimes deeper than anyone above ground can see. The fire had burned down to a bed of dull red coals, the kind that hold heat long after the flames give up. Most of the plates were stacked on the side table, and the kids had been carried inside to the guest room, limp and sugar-crashed. A cool breeze moved through the yard, carrying the faint scent of charcoal and cut grass. I stayed in my chair, nursing a fresh beer I didn't really want, watching the others settle into that loose, post-meal rhythm, where conversations splinter and reform. Ray was telling a story about his latest golf trip to Arizona, something involving a sand trap and a rattlesnake that got funnier with every retelling. Marlene laughed in all the right places. Joan scrolled through photos on her phone, showing Claire pictures of her recent cruise to Alaska. David stood at the grill, scraping it down with a wire brush, even though it didn't need it, the way some men do when they're working up to saying something. I knew it was coming before he even turned around. He set the brush aside and walked over, pulling a chair closer to mine. The others quieted a little, sensing the shift. "Pop," he started, voice low but carrying in the night air. "Can I ask you something straight?" I met his eyes. "You always can." He glanced around the circle, gathering silent permission from the rest, then back to me. "Why do you keep that old truck running? It's gotta be on its last legs. You could trade it in, get something reliable, safer. Hell, I'd co-sign if you needed." The question wasn't new. I'd heard variations of it for years. "It runs fine," I said. "Gets me where I need to go." Claire leaned in from her spot across the fire ring. "Dad, it's not just the truck. It's everything. The clothes you wear. Those same flannel shirts and jeans with the paint stains and grass marks. You look like you're heading to a job site every day. And you are, I guess. But why? You don't have to live like you're scraping by." Ray jumped in, emboldened. "Exactly. You've got a pension, Social Security. The house is paid off. You could dress like a man who's made it, not like a handyman." I looked down at my hands resting on my knees. Calloused palms, nails trimmed short, permanent half-moons of soil in the cuticles, no matter how hard I scrub. Hands that had signed payroll checks once, and now drew site plans and planted trees. "These clothes suit the work," I said. "Clean ones get dirty fast anyway." Joan made a small tisk sound. "It's not just practical, Harlan. It's presentation. People judge. When you show up looking like that, they think you need the work, that you're desperate." I felt a flicker of heat that had nothing to do with the dying coals. "Who's they?" I asked. "The people you deal with," she said. "City officials, property owners, whoever's letting you use their lots. If you showed up in a nice button-down and slacks, drove a decent vehicle, they'd take you more seriously." David nodded. "She's got a point. Perception is half the battle in any business." It's not a business, I said again, quieter this time. Claire sighed. That's part of the problem, Dad. You act like it's some pure calling, above money. But nothing is. Even nonprofits have budgets. Grants have applications. You're out there competing with professional firms, right? The ones with logos and websites and employees? I thought of the folder on my desk at home. Contracts signed with the Chicago Park District, the Trust for Public Land, a major foundation out of Seattle, invoices paid promptly. My name on letterhead that looked as sharp as any firm's. But I didn't say it. Instead, I said, I don't need employees. I work with partners when the project calls for it. Ray leaned forward. Partners who probably think you're some sweet old retiree doing charity, not a professional they should pay real money. The words landed harder than he probably meant them to. I felt them like a thorn sliding under skin. Sharp, precise, impossible to ignore. Marlene tried to soften it. He doesn't mean it like that, Harlan. We just hate thinking anyone might take advantage of you. Take advantage, I repeated. By letting me turn blighted lots into gardens. By giving kids a place to play that isn't cracked concrete. By cleaning the air and feeding people. That kind of advantage. David held up a hand. Okay, we get it. It's good work, important. But you're 65, not 25. You're killing your body for, what? Recognition you don't want? Money you won't take? It doesn't add up. I looked around the circle at their faces, lit orange by the coals. Concern, yes. Frustration. A little fear, maybe. But underneath it all, something closer to pity. They saw a man stuck in the past, clinging to grief, wasting the last good years on manual labor when he could be comfortable. They didn't see the invitations to speak at conferences in Portland and Denver, the write-ups in Landscape Architecture magazine, the waiting list of clients who knew exactly what my work was worth and were willing to pay for it. Claire's voice cut through the quiet. Do you ever think maybe Mom would want you to slow down, to enjoy life instead of working harder than you did when you were 40? The mention of Ellen hit like a cold wind. I felt it in my chest first, then in my throat. Your mother, I said slowly, used to sit on the back porch and sketch garden plans she never got to build. She'd talk about soil and light and how cities needed more green, the way other people talk about politics or sports. If she were here, she'd be right beside me with a shovel. The patio went still. Even Ray didn't have a quick comeback. Joan spoke softly. We miss her too, Harlan, but using her as an excuse to wear yourself out? It's not an excuse, I cut in. Sharper now. It's a promise. David rubbed his face. Pop, nobody's saying stop altogether. Just balance it. Do less. Charge for it. Let us help you turn it into something sustainable. Sustainable. The word almost made me laugh. I stood up, knees popping in the quiet. I've got an early morning tomorrow, meeting with the city about a new project in Garfield Park. Ray frowned. On a Sunday? Dirt doesn't take weekends, I said. Claire stood too. Dad, wait, we're not trying to fight. We love you. We're proud of you for staying active. We just want you safe. Happy. I looked at her, at all of them, and felt the weight of years. The gap that had grown inch by inch, conversation by conversation, until we were speaking different languages. I am happy, I said. Happier than I've been since your mother left. I walked around the circle, touching shoulders as I went. Marlene's, Joan's, Ray's. David's hand lingered on my arm for a second. Drive safe, Pop, he said. I nodded. At the corner of the house, I paused and looked back. They were silhouetted against the faint glow of the coals, heads together again, voices low, planning the next intervention maybe, or just venting their worry. I got into the truck, the familiar creak of the door comforting in its honesty. The engine turned over on the second try, steady as ever. As I pulled out of the driveway, the porch light flickered on, Claire waving from the door. I waved back. But inside, the thorns they'd planted were digging deeper. Not doubt in myself. I'd outgrown that years ago. But sorrow for the distance between us, for the way love can twist into judgment when people can't see past their own measure of success. The streets were quiet as I headed west toward home, past neat lawns and glowing windows, past the life I used to fit into. Tomorrow, I'd meet with a team about a 10-acre redevelopment, One of the biggest public projects the city had greenlit in decades. The kind that gets written about in national journals. The kind that changes neighborhoods forever. But tonight, driving alone under the streetlights, I felt every year of my age. Every mile between who they thought I was and who I'd become. Thorns hurt going in, but sometimes they're the only thing that reminds you you're still growing. I drove home that night with the windows down, letting the cool air slap some clarity into me. The streets of Oak Park gave way to the familiar grid of my neighborhood. Older bungalows, mature trees arching overhead, porch lights glowing like low stars. My house came into view at the end of the block, the one with the wilder front yard. Native prairie plants spilling over the walkway, a rain garden where the downspout used to flood the sidewalk, beehives tucked discreetly behind a hedge. Neighbors either loved it or tolerated it. Nobody called it neat. Inside, the place was quiet the way only an empty house can be. I hung my keys on the hook by the door, toed off my shoes, and stood in the kitchen for a minute, listening to the refrigerator hum. The clock on the stove read just past 11. Early for me, even on a Saturday. Most nights I was still sketching or reviewing soil reports until the wee hours. I poured a glass of water and carried it out to the back porch. The garden there was darker, fuller. Raised beds framed in reclaimed barnwood, fruit trees espaliered along the fence, a small pond with frogs that started up as soon as I sat down. Fireflies drifted above the perennials like slow-motion embers. Ellen's garden, grown far beyond what she'd ever imagined. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Claire. "Drive safe, Dad. Love you." "We just worry," I typed back. "I know. Love you too." Then I set the phone face down and let the night settle around me. Sleep didn't come easy. The conversation replayed in fragments. Ray's laugh, Joan's tusk, David's frustration. Claire's gentle insistence. They weren't wrong to worry. They just worried about the wrong things. I wasn't broke or broken or lost. I was exactly where I wanted to be. But proving that felt like shouting across a canyon. Morning came soft and gray, the kind of July Sunday where the humidity hangs low and the light feels filtered. I was up at 5:30 anyway, coffee in hand by 6, out in the yard checking the irrigation lines by 7. The city meeting wasn't until 9, but I needed the ritual of soil under my fingernails before facing conference rooms. I was loading tools into the truck, shovels, a roll of landscape fabric, sample boards with plant photos, when my phone rang. Unknown number, but the area code was local. "Harlan Whitaker," I answered. "Harlan, it's Elias Grant." The voice was warm, familiar, with that faint Carolina drawl that always made him sound like he was smiling. "Hope I'm not calling too early on a Sunday." Elias Grant, founder of the Grant Foundation, one of the biggest private funders of urban sustainability in the country. Billionaire philanthropist, yes. But more importantly, a man who understood that green space wasn't a luxury, it was infrastructure. "Not early at all," I said. "Good to hear from you. I'm in Chicago for the day, unexpected layover on my way to Toronto. I was hoping to swing by and see the Garfield Park site in person before the full team meeting tomorrow. I know it's last minute, but if you've got time this morning." I glanced at the truck bed, already half loaded. "I'm heading out there now to prep for a city walkthrough. You're welcome to join." "Perfect. Text me the address. I'll meet you there in 45. "Will do." I hung up and felt the small lift that always came when Elias talked about my work. We'd collaborated on projects from Detroit to Atlanta, rooftop farms, linear parks along old rail lines, healing gardens for hospitals. He didn't just write checks. He rolled up his sleeves when it mattered. And he'd been the one to nominate me for the American Society of Landscape Architects' highest honor 2 years ago. An award my family still didn't know about. I finished loading, locked the house, and drove west. Garfield Park is one of Chicago's grand old conservatories, but the 10-acre parcel we were redeveloping sat just east of it. An abandoned industrial site that had sat vacant for decades. Brownfield remediation had taken 2 years, but now the soil was clean, the grading done, and we were ready to break ground on what would become the city's largest community-driven urban oasis. Food forest, pollinator meadows, outdoor classrooms, performance space, everything woven together with walking paths and rainwater systems. I pulled onto the site through the temporary gate and parked beside the construction trailer. A few crew members were already there, sipping coffee from paper cups. I greeted them, then walked the perimeter, making notes on my clipboard. At 8:30 sharp, a black Suburban rolled in. Elias stepped out in khakis and a simple linen shirt, looking more like a college professor than one of the richest men in America. He spotted me and strode over with that easy grin. "Harlan, you old dirt wizard." He clasped my hand firmly. "Place looks even better than the renderings." "Wait till you see it planted," I said. We started walking the site, me pointing out contours, explaining the water flow design. The phased planting schedule. Elias asked sharp questions, nodded at the answers, occasionally pulled out his phone to snap photos. The crew kept a respectful distance, knowing who he was. We were standing in what would become the central meadow when another vehicle pulled in, David's SUV. I frowned. He wasn't due here. Nobody from the family was. David climbed out, looking around with that slight squint he got when he was out of his element. He was dressed for a casual Sunday, golf shirt, shorts, but the confusion on his face was clear. "Pop," he called, walking toward us. "Claire said you had some city thing today. Thought I'd swing by, see what you've been working on, maybe lend a hand." I felt something tighten in my gut. This wasn't the place for a family tour, not today. Elias turned, polite curiosity on his face. "David," I said, "this is unexpected." "Yeah, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt." He looked at Elias, extended a hand. "David Whitaker." Elias shook it. "Elias Grant." David's eyebrows went up, just slightly, but I caught it. Everyone in Chicago knew the name Grant Foundation. Billboards, news segments, gala invitations. "Mr. Grant, nice to meet you." David glanced at me. "You two, working together?" "Elias is funding a good portion of this project," I said carefully. David nodded slowly, taking in the vast site. The survey stakes, the heavy equipment parked off to the side. "This is one of yours, Pop?" "One of mine," I confirmed. Elias smiled. "One of his best, actually. Harlan's designs are the reason we committed $25 million to this phase alone." David's head snapped toward me. $25 million? Elias didn't notice the tension. He kept talking, enthusiastic. "And this is just the latest. We've partnered with your father on 8 major projects across the country. His sustainable systems have become the gold standard for urban redevelopment. The ASLA medal was well-deserved." David looked like someone had pulled the ground out from under him. I tried to steer it back. "Elias, why don't you and I finish the walkthrough? David, maybe another time." But Elias was already turning to David with genuine warmth. "You must be proud. Your dad's work is changing cities, literally improving air quality, reducing flood risk, feeding thousands. And the aesthetics? Well, you'll see when it's finished. It's art as much as engineering." David managed a nod. "Yeah, proud." His voice sounded far away. Elias checked his watch. "I've got a plane to catch, but Harlan, walk me back to the car. David, pleasure meeting you. Hope to see you at the groundbreaking ceremony next month." David shook his hand again, mute. As Elias and I walked away, I heard David exhale like he'd been holding his breath for years. At the Suburban, Elias clasped my shoulder. "Family's everything. Bring them to the opening. They should see what you've built." "I'll think about it," I said. He climbed in, the driver pulled away, and I stood there for a moment, gathering myself before turning back. David was still in the middle of the meadow site, staring at the stakes that outlined future paths. I walked over slowly. He looked up when I reached him. $25 million, Pop?" "That's the foundation's commitment," I said. "There's more from the city and other partners." He shook his head, not in disbelief exactly, more like trying to reorient. "You've been doing this. How long?" "Big projects like this, about 7 years. Smaller ones longer." "And the medal Elias mentioned. American Society of Landscape Architects, highest honor they give." David let out a short laugh that had no humor in it. "Jesus, all this time we've been lecturing you about getting a real job, downsizing, being careful with money, and you've been running major projects funded by billionaires." I didn't smile. "I never said I wasn't working. You never said you were one of the best in the country at it." We stood in the quiet, the breeze moving through the tall grasses at the site's edge. Finally, he spoke again, quieter. Why didn't you tell us? I considered the question, the one I'd asked myself many times. Because the first few times I tried, you all smiled politely and changed the subject. After a while, it was easier to let you think what you needed to think. He flinched. Pop, I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now. But the blossoms were out now, hidden no more, and there was no putting them back in the bud. David and I stood in the middle of that vast, staked-out meadow, the morning sun climbing higher and burning off the last of the haze. The crew had tactfully retreated to the trailer, giving us space, but I could feel their occasional glances our way. Out here, with nothing but dirt and possibility around us, the silence between my son and me felt bigger than the 10 acres we were standing on. David finally broke it. Pop, $25 million for one project. He said it like he was testing the words, seeing if they still sounded real in the open air. That's just the grant foundation piece, I said. Total budget's closer to 40 with the city match and other partners. He let out a slow breath. $40 million, and you're the lead designer. I nodded. Have been for over a year now. He looked around again, slower this time, as if seeing the stakes and string lines for what they really were. Blueprints for something monumental. This isn't a hobby. No. It never was. No. He rubbed the back of his neck, the way he did when he was processing a logistics snag at work. All those times we pushed you to monetize it, to scale back, to get a real job. We were talking out of our asses. I didn't disagree, didn't need to. David walked a few steps, stopped at one of the survey flags marking the future food forest edge. How many projects like this have you done? Big ones. This is the 9th. Smaller community gardens, schoolyards, corporate campuses, dozens. And the award Elias mentioned? 2 years ago, the ASLA medal. It's the highest honor in the profession. He turned to face me fully. Why keep it from us? All of it? I leaned on the handle of a shovel I'd left stuck in the ground earlier. At first, I tried sharing. Remember when I got the contract for the Logan Square rooftop farm? I showed you the plans at Sunday dinner. You asked if I was getting paid enough to cover the gas out there. David winced. Then the piece in the Tribune about the Inglewood orchard. I brought the clipping. Mom, Claire, said it was nice I was volunteering. Ray joked about me finally finding a way to play in the dirt and call it work. He looked down at the ground. We thought you were grieving too long, that you'd found a distraction. I know what you thought. Pop, I'm sorry. His voice cracked just a little on the last word. I'm so damn sorry. I felt something loosen in my chest, something I hadn't realized was knotted up tight. I didn't keep it secret to punish you, I said. After a while, it just felt separate. This world I'd built. It didn't need approval from folks who couldn't see it. And telling you would have invited questions I wasn't ready for. Loans, advice, opinions on how I should run it. I'd spent 40 years taking advice on how to live. I was done. David nodded slowly. Fair. We stood quiet for another minute. A red-winged blackbird landed on a nearby stake, trilled once, flew off. He cleared his throat. Does anyone else in the family know? Nobody. Claire's going to lose her mind. She'll probably cry, I said. She cries at commercials. David huffed a small laugh. Yeah, Ray's going to be insufferable, bragging about his brother, the famous landscape architect. Joan will want to know if I've got good health insurance now. We both smiled at that, small and real. David stepped closer. Can you show me? Walk me through what this place is going to be. So I did. We started at the entrance gate and moved through the site the way visitors would one day. I pointed out where the welcome pavilion would stand, built from salvaged materials, roof planted with sedums to manage stormwater. The children's nature play area with logs, boulders, and a sandpit fed by a hand pump. The community orchards, apples, pears, serviceberries, underplanted with currants and herbs. The pollinator meadows that would bloom in waves from April to October. The outdoor classroom amphitheater. The boardwalk through the wetland that would clean runoff before it reached the lagoon. David listened without interrupting, asking only the occasional question, smart ones, about maintenance budgets, community involvement, long-term funding. The kind of questions a man who runs a company would ask. When we reached the highest point, a gentle rise that would become an overlook with benches and a wind sculpture, he stopped and took it all in. "This is extraordinary," he said quietly. "It's not just pretty, it's smart, necessary, like you said last night." I didn't reply, didn't need to. He turned to me. "I feel like an idiot." "You're not. I treated you like you were lost, like you needed saving. You were trying to protect me, I know that." Still, he shook his head. "We all were, and we were so wrong." I thought about all the evenings I'd spent alone in the studio, drawing sections and planting plans while they worried I was lonely, about the checks I'd deposited that would have paid off their mortgages twice over, about the invitations to symposiums in Europe I'd turned down because I didn't want to explain the trips. "Wrong doesn't mean cruel," I said. "You loved me the best way you knew how." He looked at me for a long moment. "Can we do better?" "That's up to you." He nodded, resolute. "It's up to all of us, starting with me." My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably the city crew letting me know they were running late. I ignored it. David pulled out his own phone, glanced at the screen, then back at me. "Claire's texting, wants to know if you're free for coffee later. She's got the kids at the park. Tell her I'll meet her there at 2. He typed quickly, then pocketed the phone. "I'm going to tell her about all this, if that's okay." "It's time," I said. He exhaled, part relief, part nerves. "She's going to want to see everything. Bring the kids. Ray and Joan too, probably. Let them come." We started walking back toward the trucks. Halfway there, he stopped again. "Pop, the truck, the clothes, the house. It wasn't because you couldn't afford better. No, you chose it. I chose the work, the rest followed." He looked at my old Ford, rust and all, with new eyes. "I've been driving a leased Lexus for 3 years. Feels stupid now." "It suits you," I said. "This suits me." We reached the vehicles. He hesitated before getting in. "I'm proud of you," he said. "I should have said it years ago, but I'm saying it now. Proud as hell." The words settled warm in my chest, deeper than the sun on my shoulders. "Thank you, son." He climbed into his SUV, paused with the door open. "See you at the park?" 2:00. He drove off, kicking up a little dust on the service road. I stood alone again, but the site didn't feel empty anymore. Secrets unearthed have a way of letting light in. I pulled out my phone and opened the family group text, something I rarely did. Typed a simple message. "Coffee at the park with Claire and the kids this afternoon. Would love if the rest of you joined. Got some things to show you. Sent." Then I turned back to the land waiting under my feet. $40 million worth of possibility, but the real value was in what grew after the ground got turned. Family included. I met Claire at the park on the edge of Oak Park, the one with the old oaks and the playground that's been there since I was a kid myself. It was early afternoon, the sun high and forgiving. Families scattered across the grass with picnics and frisbees. Lily spotted me first from the top of the slide and came running full tilt, Max waddling behind her as fast as his legs would carry him. Claire followed at a more measured pace, pushing the empty stroller, her face already asking questions. "Grandpa," Lily crashed into my legs. "Mom said you have a surprise." I scooped her up, felt her warm weight against my shoulder. "Maybe I do." Max reached us, arms up. I swung him onto my other hip, one grandkid on each side like bookends. Claire arrived, kissed my cheek, and searched my face. "David texted me something cryptic about meeting you here and bringing the kids to see the real thing." "What's going on, Dad?" "Let's sit," I said. We found a bench under a sprawling bur oak, the kind with branches low enough for kids to climb. Lily and Max ran off to the nearby swings, close enough to keep an eye on but far enough for grown-up talk. Claire sat beside me, hands folded in her lap, the way she did when she was bracing for numbers that didn't add up. "David came by the Garfield Park site this morning," I started. Her eyebrows rose. "The community garden thing? It's a $40 million urban redevelopment project, largest of its kind in the Midwest." She blinked. "40 million?" I nodded. Elias Grant showed up unexpectedly. "He's funding half of it." David overheard him talking about my work, about the ASLA medal, the other projects. Claire's mouth opened, closed. "Dad, I've been doing this full-time for years, Claire. Professionally, successfully. The old truck, the house, the clothes. It's not because I can't afford better. It's because I don't need better. The work pays well. Very well. She stared at me for a long moment, then her eyes filled. I knew they would. Why didn't you tell us? Her voice was thick. Same reason I told David. Early on, I tried. You all smiled, nodded, changed the subject. Said it was nice I had a hobby. After a while, I stopped trying. It hurt less that way. A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't bother wiping it. We thought we were helping, she whispered. Pushing you towards something stable, secure. We thought you were drifting. I know. I feel sick. She pressed a hand to her stomach. All those conversations, telling you to downsize, to take it easy. God, Dad, we were so arrogant. You were scared for me. That doesn't excuse it. She looked over at the kids, Lily pushing Max gently on the baby swing. We missed everything. Your awards, your big openings. We weren't there. You're here now. She turned back to me, eyes fierce through the tears. I want to see it, all of it. The Garfield site, your studio, the projects that are finished. I want the kids to see what their grandpa built. They will. David's SUV pulled into the lot then. He climbed out with Ray, Marlene, and Joan piling out behind him. Someone had rallied the troops fast. Claire gave a watery laugh. He didn't waste time. Guess not. They approached like a small delegation, David leading, Ray looking sheepish. Joan wary, Marlene carrying a bakery box probably meant as a peace offering. David spoke first. We come in peace, Pop. And with apologies. Ray cleared his throat. Big ones. I stood. The kids ran over, sensing the shift in energy. Lily grabbed my hand. Claire stood too, faced the group. He told me everything. Her voice shook, but she held their eyes. We've been idiots. All of us. Joan's practical mask slipped. Harlan, is it true? About the metal, the big projects? It's true. Ray set the bakery box on the bench, hands unsteady. I've been running my mouth for years about you needing to get serious. Meanwhile, you've been, hell, you're famous in your field. Not famous, I said. Just good at what I do. Marlene opened the box, cannoli from the Italian place on Taylor Street. We thought sugar might help. Joan stepped forward, did something she rarely did. Hugged me hard. I'm sorry, brother. I kept going on about your knees and your back. Worried you'd hurt yourself digging holes. Turns out you've been building empires. Not empires, I said into her shoulder. Gardens. She pulled back, eyes wet. Same thing, apparently. Ray waited his turn, then clasped my hand, pulled me into a rough hug. Proud of you, Harlan. Should have said it sooner, way sooner. David hung back until last. I told them everything I saw this morning, the site. What Elias said. They wanted to hear it from you, though. I looked at them all, my kids, my brother, my sister, Marlene, standing in a loose half-circle. Faces open in a way they hadn't been in years. Groundbreaking for Garfield Park is next month, I said. Formal ceremony, press, city officials, the whole thing. I've got invitations for all of you, plus ones. Lily tugged my sleeve. Can we go, Grandpa? You bet. You'll get to throw the first shovelful of dirt with me. Max clapped his hands, not understanding but excited anyway. Claire wiped her face. We'll be there, front row. Ray grinned, the old cocky one returning but softer now. I'll wear a tie, maybe even buy a new one, Joan snorted. Don't strain yourself. The tension broke into laughter, real this time. We sat on the grass, cannoli passed around, kids climbing over us like monkeys. They asked questions, hesitant at first, then eager. About the projects, the travel, the money, the awards. I answered honestly. Told them about the rooftop farm in Detroit that fed 1,000 families. The healing garden at the Children's Hospital in Milwaukee that reduced patient stress metrics by 30%. The corporate campus in Seattle where my living wall cut their cooling costs by $250,000 a year. Told them about turning down speaking gigs in Stockholm and Singapore because I didn't want to leave the work. Told them how Ellen's sketches still lived in every plan I drew. Claire listened like she was hearing about a stranger, then slowly realizing it was her father all along. When the sun began to lower, casting long shadows across the playground, David spoke up. Pop, can we see your studio? Tonight? I know it's late notice, but... The others nodded. It's not fancy, I warned. We don't care, Ray said. So we caravanned back to my bungalow. I led them through the gate, past the prairie front yard that made Joan mutter about HOA letters I'd never gotten. Around back to the detached garage I'd converted years ago. Insulated, skylights added, a small office loft built inside. I flipped on the lights. They filed in quietly. The space was organized chaos. Rolling tables covered in trace paper and sketches, shelves of soil samples in glass jars, a wall of pinned photos, before and after shots of projects from barren lots to blooming oases, models of Garfield Park in foam and balsa, awards on a high shelf, gathering respectful dust, a drafting table with the current Venice-inspired healing garden plan half finished. Claire walked straight to the photos, eyes wide. "This is you? All of this?" "Me and a lot of good partners." Ray picked up a scale model of the Garfield meadow, turned it carefully in his hands. $40 million worth of art. "Function," I corrected gently. "Both," he said. Joan studied the awards shelf. American Society of Landscape Architects Medal of Excellence. Cooper Hewitt National Design Award. Jesus, Harlan. Marlene touched a framed article from the New York Times. Urban visionary, Harlan Whitaker's Green Revolution. Lily and Max ran between the tables, careful not to touch, awed by the grown-up silence. David stood at the drafting table, looking at the Venice plan. "You're still creating. Always will be." Claire came to me then, hugged me again. "We have a lot to make up for." "You don't owe me anything," I said. "Just see me, the real me." "We do," she whispered. "We will." Outside, dusk settled purple over the garden. The frogs started up in the pond. We stood on the back porch, drinking in the quiet. Pruning hurts, cutting away old growth, dead wood, the parts that no longer serve. But it's the only way to let light reach what's trying to bloom. My family stood around me, closer than they'd been in years, seeing the garden I'd grown in the dark. And for the first time in a long while, I felt the light on all of us. The weeks after that Sunday blurred into a kind of gentle chaos I hadn't known I was missing. My phone, usually quiet except for the project updates and the occasional check-in from David or Claire, started lighting up with texts from the family. Photos of Ray attempting to plant tomatoes in pots on his condo balcony, lopsided, overwatered, but proud. Joan sending links to articles about native plants, asking if they'd work in her shady backyard. Marlene forwarding garden tour events in the suburbs, wondering if I'd like company. Claire brought the kids to the house 3 times that first month. Lily helped me prune the espaliered apples, standing on a step stool with safety shears almost as big as her arms. Max mostly dug holes I had to refill later, but his laughter echoed through the yard like birdsong. Claire watched it all with a new kind of quiet, the kind that comes after you've said you're sorry and been forgiven. David came alone one Saturday morning, coffee in hand, and asked if he could shadow me on a site visit. We spent the day at a smaller project, a schoolyard in Humboldt Park, getting a nature play area and edible garden. He carried boards, asked questions about soil amendments, took notes on his phone like he was back in a boardroom. On the drive home, he said, "I get it now. Why you never wanted to turn this into something else. It's not a business, it's stewardship." I didn't reply right away, just let the word settle between us. "Stewardship," I repeated finally. "That's as good a word as any." The groundbreaking for Garfield Park came on a crisp morning in late August. The sky a hard, bright blue that made everything look sharper. The site had been cleared and graded, temporary fencing draped with banners announcing the project. A stage stood at one end, rows of folding chairs filling with city officials, foundation reps, community members, reporters. Elias Grant flew in specially, looking relaxed in linen despite the importance of the day. My family arrived early, claiming the front row I'd reserved for them. Claire in a sundress, hair down for once instead of in its usual practical knot. David in a button-down but no tie. Progress. Ray sported the new one he'd bragged about, but loosened. Joan carried a wide-brimmed hat against the sun. Marlene had baked muffins for the kids, who were dressed in matching, Future Gardener t-shirts Claire had made. They looked nervous, excited, proud in a way that didn't need announcing. Elias found us before the ceremony started. He shook hands all around, charming as ever. "You must be the Whitaker clan," he said. "Harlan's told me about you." Ray puffed up a little. "He's told us about you too, Mr. Grant." Quite a partnership you've got. Call me Elias. And yes, best decision I ever made, betting on your brother's vision. Claire's eyes misted again. She'd been doing that a lot lately. The program began with speeches. Mayor's office, park district, community reps. They all mentioned my name, my designs, the impact expected. I stood off to the side, hands in pockets, feeling the weight of eyes on me. Not uncomfortable, exactly, just unfamiliar. Then it was my turn. I stepped to the podium, looked out over the crowd, and found my family's faces first. Anchors. I didn't prepare remarks. Never do. This land's been waiting a long time, I started. Industrial past, forgotten corners. Soil that carried more hurt than hope. But land remembers care. It responds to it. What we break ground on today isn't just a park. It's a promise. To the kids who'll learn here, the families who'll eat from here, the city that'll breathe easier because of it. I paused. Let the quiet hold. None of this happens alone. Thank you to the Grant Foundation, to the city, to the community that fought for this space, and to my family. I looked straight at them. Who taught me early that roots matter, even when they couldn't see how deep mine had grown. Claire pressed a hand to her mouth. David nodded, eyes shining. Ray lifted his chin, proud. The ceremonial shovels waited. Polished chrome things the city loves for photo ops. I called Lily and Max up with me. The crowd laughed indulgently as the kids gripped their tiny shovels and threw dirt with more enthusiasm than accuracy. I turned the first real spade of earth myself, felt it bite clean into the soil. Cameras clicked. Applause rose. Afterward, while folks mingled and toured the site maps, my family gathered around me. Claire hugged me first. That was beautiful, Dad. David clapped my shoulder. You made the mayor look stiff. Ray grinned. Got any room on your team for a retired hardware guy? I know my way around a shovel. Joan swatted him. You'd pull your back in 10 minutes. But she looked at me softly. We're proud, Harlan, beyond words. Marlene handed out the muffins. Lily and Max ran circles around us, high on attention and sugar. Elias joined us for a minute. Venice next year? He asked me quietly. A major international exhibit had invited a retrospective of my work. We'll see, I said. He smiled. Bring the family. They've earned it. As the crowd thinned, we lingered on the site. I walked them through it again, slower this time, pointing out where the orchards would fruit, where the wetland would sing with frogs, where the overlook would frame sunsets over the city. David asked about maintenance endowments. Claire wondered about school programs. Ray speculated on tree species. Joan worried about accessibility paths. Real questions, engaged ones. They were learning my language. That night, back home, I sat on the porch alone. The garden hummed with evening insects. The air thick with the scent of nicotiana and late summer phlox. My phone held a new group text thread. Photos from the day, messages flying back and forth. Claire, Dad, the kids won't stop talking about Grandpa's big dirt party. Ray, got dirt in my shoes. Worth it. Joan, article in the Tribune online already. Front page of the local section. David, proud doesn't cover it, Pop. I read them twice, then set the phone down. Forgiveness isn't a single moment. It's a season. You prune the old growth, clear the debris, let light reach what's been shaded too long. Then you wait. Some branches take, some don't. But new growth shows itself in small ways. Green shoots pushing through soil you thought was spent. Leaves unfurling where you least expect them. My family was unfurling. I thought about calling them all over for dinner tomorrow. Nothing fancy, just grilled sweet corn from the garden, tomatoes still warm from the vine, basil pesto Claire loved as a kid. Simple things, real things, the kind that root deep and last. I leaned back in my chair, listened to the night settle, and felt the years shift into something gentler. Growth isn't always upward and showy. Sometimes it's quiet, spreading underground, connecting what was separate, strengthening what was weak. But it's growth all the same. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't tending it alone. It's December now, the ground hard under a thin blanket of snow. The garden sleeping beneath it all. I stand at the overlook in Garfield Park, breath fogging in the cold air, looking out over what we built. The paths are cleared for winter walkers, benches dusted off by the maintenance crew. The structural evergreens, pines, junipers, spruces, stand dark green against the white, holding the shape of the place even in dormancy. The food forest's fruit trees are bare, but the branches are strong, pruned clean last month by a team that includes a couple of familiar faces. David's been out here every weekend since September, learning the rhythms of seasonal care. Ray shows up when he can, mostly to haul brush or spread mulch, grumbling about the cold but staying longer than he planned. Claire organized a volunteer day for her firm. Accountants in designer coats laying wood chips, laughing at their blistered hands by the end. Even Joan's been out, bundled up like she's heading to Antarctica, checking that the paths are salted properly. The park opened officially in October, a quieter event than the groundbreaking. No big speeches, just a ribbon cutting and an open gate. People came anyway. Families from the neighborhood, school groups, folks from farther out who'd read about it in the papers. They walk the paths now, even in winter, drawn by the promise of what's coming when the ground thaws. I come here most mornings, early enough that the frost is still crisp. It's become my ritual, coffee in a thermos, a slow circuit of the site, checking on the young plantings, noting what needs tweaking come spring. The work never really ends, and that's the point. My phone buzzes in my coat pocket. A text from Claire. Kids want to know if Grandpa's park has snow angels yet. I smile, type back, plenty of room. Bring boots. They'll be here in an hour. The Venice retrospective opens in March, an entire pavilion dedicated to 30 years of my work. Models, drawings, photographs, even a small living wall shipped over in sections. Elias pulled strings to make it happen. I wasn't sure I wanted the spotlight, but he said, the work deserves it. And so do the people who will learn from it. The families coming, all of them. David booked the tickets. Business class, no arguments allowed. Claire's already planning side trips for the kids. Glass blowing in Murano, gelato every day. Ray and Marlene are extending their stay for a week in Tuscany afterward. Jones packed a medical kit big enough for a small hospital, but promised to leave the nurse voice at home. I told them they didn't have to come. That it was a long way for something that's really just about plants and dirt. Claire looked at me like I'd suggested canceling Christmas. Dad, she said, we're not missing this, not 1 second. So they'll be there, front row again, watching critics and curators and strangers walk through rooms filled with what I've made. Seeing my name on walls in a city built on water, it still feels a little unreal, but not as unreal as the changes closer to home. David sold the Lexus, bought a used pickup instead, newer than mine, but practical. Says he needs it for hauling plants he started in a greenhouse he built off his garage. Claire's firm took on pro bono work for a nonprofit land trust, her idea. Ray donated a chunk from his retirement fund to the Garfield Endowment. No fanfare, just a quiet check with a note. For the trees. Joan's backyard is half native plants now, her HOA complaints be damned. Small shifts, real ones. Some nights we gather at my place, nothing formal, just whoever shows up. I grill whatever's left from the root cellar, potatoes, onions, the last of the squash. We eat on the porch even when it's cold. Blankets over laps, stories flowing easier than they have in decades. They talk about their lives. I talk about mine. No more translating. No more holding back. Lily asks endless questions about how roots work underground, how trees know when to leaf out. Max mostly wants to be held, pointing at the stars like he's naming them. I tell them about Ellen, more than I used to, how she'd have loved this park, loved Venice, loved watching our kids finally see what she always did. Claire listens hardest then, says she feels her mother in the gardens too. Maybe she does. I never set out to prove anything to anyone, not really. After Ellen left, I just needed something to pour the grief into, something that grew instead of shrank. The work became the point. Success came quiet, steady, without announcement. Money followed. Recognition followed. But the heart of it was always the doing. Having my family see it now doesn't change the work, doesn't make it more valid, but it makes the living richer. There's a bench at the top of the overlook, dedicated quietly to Ellen. A simple bronze plaque, in memory of Ellen Whitaker, who taught us that beauty can grow anywhere. I sit there sometimes, like today, and watch the winter light move across the snow-covered meadows. Footprints crisscross the paths, Early walkers, dog owners, kids dragging sleds from the adjacent hill. Life moving through the space already, even in the quiet season. Evergreens don't shout in winter. They just stand, holding green when everything else lets go. Reminding you what's coming when the thaw arrives. That's legacy, I think. Not the awards on the shelf. Not the headlines or the budgets or the international invitations. It's the quiet standing, the roots that spread unseen, the green that holds through the cold. My family's learned that now, not perfectly. We still argue, Ray about politics, Joan about my blood pressure, David about whether I should hire an assistant. But the arguments land different, on soil that's been turned and amended, ready for new planting. I hear tires on the service road, Claire's minivan, early as usual. Doors slam, Lily's voice carries across the snow. Grandpa, I stand, brush snow from my coat. They come into view, bundled figures waving, breath clouding, boots crunching. I wave back. The garden sleeps under white, but the roots are working, and come spring, everything will push upward again, together. Some victories aren't loud. They're evergreen, steady, enduring, quiet in their strength. You build them one season at a time. And if you're lucky, the people you love learn to stand in the green with you. I am lucky.